All right, and we're recording. So whenever you're ready, Lori, go ahead and take off.
Okay. Thank you so much for the introduction, Sarah. Welcome again, everyone. I'll just jump right in and get started. I have our contact information. If you should need to send an email with some follow-up questions or just anything else after the fact. And our project webpage is up here too, and I believe it's in the chat as well. So, why are we here today? Why are we here talking about this? The City Plan Commission requested staff to initiate a code amendment to our Dallas Development Code, which prescribes our regulations, development regulations for the city of Dallas. And so they asked us to initiate the code amendment to limit impervious coverage for both residential and non-residential lots. Um, and of course, by doing so, by limiting impervious coverage, that aligns us with several of our city plans and policies um, that seek to reduce the flooding and the heat island effect that's exacerbated by the impervious surfaces. Some of the issues and concerns, again, flooding is obviously an issue of late and, for many years now and just getting worse. And that some of those issues do stem from impervious surfaces where stormwater, rainfall and stormwater cannot infiltrate properly into the soil. Other issues, as we know, we have major heat here in the Metroplex, and it seems to just be getting hotter and hotter. And as you can see in this parking lot picture, the temperatures can be as hot or as high as 160 degrees for these darker impervious surfaces or even pervious surfaces. So we have flash flooding issues, and I know many of us have experienced that. And again, that's caused by lack of infiltration of rainwater into the soil, and also that the stormwater, you end up with pollutants from that runoff, from the stormwater runoff into our rivers and streams, um, which causes water quality degradation. Flooding events, you have larger, major flooding events also of our rivers and critical watersheds, leading, of course, to destruction of property, wildlife habitat, and ecosystems. And the scorching heat and the heat island effect basically is due to heat that's being absorbed into the dark surfaces, and then the heat gets trapped there. And yet we experience higher temperatures in our urban areas from this trapped heat that doesn't get reflected back into the atmosphere. And also, of course, when you have a lot of impervious surface, like in these photographs with a lack of trees, you don't have the shading, of course, as well. So, of course, there's health issues associated with all of these impacts for humans and animals from the higher temperatures. Asthma, heat stroke. There's so many different heat-related incidents that occur in the summertime here. And then, of course, there's air quality issues that from particulate matter that don't get properly filtered from the air that we breathe from the lack of trees, because trees do help mitigate the air quality and filter our air. Um, These are some pictures also that kind of give you a perspective of differing um, percentages of what they look like of your impervious surfaces. In the top left corner of the screen, it's showing a forecourt driveway for duplex. As you can see, it's largely impervious versus the top right photo, which is a single car driveway for each side of the duplex, you know, where you have more pervious area. And then the bottom right corner, as you can see, even more pervious areas with just a single car ribbon driveway. So just to kind of show you the differences and some of the issues that are arising in our area. So our proposal for the code amendment, and I do want to mention again, that we are still in the public input stage. It's a draft code amendment, and you know, we're still seeking and taking public comment, and we want your input very much. But we don't anticipate taking this code amendment to our through our process of public hearings, which the first body would be the Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee. Um, we we don't really intend to take that forward into them until May. So I just wanted to put that out there. Oh, it's really sensitive today. I'm sorry. um, so for residential uses, and this would be for new development, it's these requirements are is not retroactive, meaning it's for new development only, or maybe additions or total redevelopment. But for residential uses, a required maximum impervious coverage percentage, we're proposing for just the required front yard, and I'll explain that in a minute, 40% for most of the single family lots or development, except the agricultural. And agricultural, which is, of course, they have greater setbacks, they're typically more rural in nature. We're thinking 30% for a maximum impervious coverage percentage. So in the drawing, what we have is a typical 50-foot wide single family lot with a 25-foot required front yard setback. And so, you know, when you do that calculation, that gives you 1,250 square feet of that front yard area, or the required front yard setback is what we're calling it. So when you take 40% of that, you're left with 500 square feet of impervious area that you can have. And so what that looks like, as you can see in the drawing, is the 375 square foot. That's a driveway that would be easily accommodate a 2-car driveway. And then you have a little, you know, landing pad, if you will, or just entryway. And then just a pedestrian type walkway to, you know, maybe the patio, open patio area, or just into the house. And then if you go further to the right of that drawing, you see that you could also um, do it a little bit differently. You could design, if you had, say, a ribbon driveway, where maybe where you had, you know, just 100 square feet area and 40-foot strips on either side. Then you can have, you know, other elements. Of course, you would have a 75 square foot patio area, and just different pathways, pedestrian pathways on either sides of the front. So very achievable, is what we're thinking. And then on the non-residential, for non-residential uses, the maximum impervious coverage percentage we're thinking would be of just the parking areas. And we're thinking 80% maximum impervious coverage as a base, except on parkway streets. And I'll cover that in a minute. I'll show you some maps of what I'm referring to. But parkway streets, any lots abutting parkway streets would be 60% for maximum pervious coverage. And the parkway streets are the streets that tend to go along our very vulnerable flood prone areas, our watersheds, our lakes, our creeks, and those areas that need a little bit more protection. So in the drawing, what you're looking at is a parking area that has 20% reduction of impervious surfaces, or the 80% impervious. And so that would leave you with quite a bit of, again, impervious surface for your driveways and even your parking spaces. You'll notice they have, there's a 12-foot parking, it's not, in this case, it's not a median, it's where you could have impervious or pervious surface, I'm sorry, and some large trees and those areas. And then on the other side, you have another landscape type island. And so if you do that, you still can achieve the 80% maximum that's being required, or that we're proposing to be required. So let's talk about and take a look at those parkway streets. I know the map's difficult to see, so I did a cutout for you. If you'll notice, the parkway streets are in the green, the darker green color on the legend. And right here for Bachman Lake, as you can see, the darker green strip of street that kind of, curves right around Bachman Lake. And again, our idea here is for that street typology is to have some greater protection. So that would be 60% for any lot that would, any non-residential lot that would be abutting Bachman Lake. Another screenshot of that is this is just showing the Trinity River watershed. And again, you can see the darker green parkway streets that kind of follow with the flood zone area, and some other streets near there that need a little bit more protection. Excuse me. And just another example, this is White Rock Lake. I know, of course, we've had some flooding issues, and I know a lot of you are very familiar with White Rock Lake and the need for protection in that area. Same thing, you can see in dark green the streets that are considered to be parkway streets with that greater protection. Okay, so we talked about the base impervious coverage maximums. Now we'll talk about some ways that some incentives where you can get a little bit additional impervious coverage percentages. We'll talk about residential first. So I'm so sorry, this is so sensitive today. Sorry. So for our residential uses, you might be eligible for, or could be eligible for, a maximum 5% additional impervious coverage for any of the following. And that would be for a total of 10% maximum possible. Could not go beyond that. But in the photo here, you'll see one of the ways you could get the additional 5% would be to have a rain barrel to capture rainwater for reuse, in landscaping, to water landscaping. And again, the incentives or the additional impervious coverage percentages do not apply to lots that are abutting parkway streets. Because again, we're looking for the greater protection in those areas. Another way, or another method for a potential maximum 5% additional impervious coverage would be, excuse me, would be to have some pervious paving. It's also referred to in our code in our ordinance as all as drainable, all weather and drainable materials. So there's different names for it, but I'm going to refer to it as pervious paving. So in the photo on the left, you can see some brick pavers, and that's for townhome development. And then the middle and last photo, that's just showing some of the basalt stone um, that several of the homes already have in our area. Okay, and then also for residential, there may be eligibility for a maximum 10% additional impervious coverage for any of the following greening factors. And we are allowing a little bit higher percentage to get that 10% for just, one of these elements of greening factors, because the greening factors are they have greater impacts as far as they have multiple benefits for stormwater and the heat island impact. So they do both of those, not just one function, like the water collection method would be, really just water conservation and reuse, but it doesn't really do anything for the heat island effect. So um, in the photos here, what you see is some green infrastructure, and that's rain gardens in the front yard and on the left-hand side, and then or for additional trees um, above and beyond what is required already. You would be eligible for or could be eligible for a maximum 10% additional impervious coverage. And then the other photo, they're actually showing a rain garden and pervious pavers in the front yard. And of course, you know, they would still be, even if you two were accomplished, that's wonderful, but the maximum total would still be only up to an additional 10% possible. So again, for most of the single family lots, other than agricultural, the base is 40%. So if they did something like the green infrastructure techniques, they could go up to an additional 10%, which would be maximum of 50% impervious coverage, no more than that. And again, that would not, these incentives would not apply to lots abutting Parkway Street. So they would be maxed out at the 40% and not eligible for any incentives. Excuse me. Okay, so for non-residential uses, same thing, we have incentives. Some up to an additional 5% additional impervious coverage. And again, if you combine them, you still can only get up to 10%. So that we have a few more elements, of course, for non-residential, pervious off-street parking areas. The first photo is pea gravel, and then in the middle, you're seeing a variety of pervious materials for pedestrian pathways through a parking lot. And then you have the turf block parking spaces on the right. Um, Also, water management to conserve and recycle water. Um, you have some cisterns on the left, and then some overland flow, with your inlets, and then disconnected downspouts, which is all watering the landscaping. You're kind of reusing that same water, using water management techniques to capture and then recycle that water to use to water landscaping. And then cool off-street parking area coatings. That's cool paving coatings on the left. And I did want to point out that for the lighter colored, like cool pavement, it's more reflective, and um, it can reduce your temperature up to about as high as 15% lower than a darker type of surface. So there's quite a bit of the heat island um, effect reduction for that. And middle photo, same thing. It's just a lighter colored surface material. They just happen to also have a bioswale as well in the middle. And then on in the last photo, they have the lighter colored coating, but then they also have some brick pavers that they've also taken and painted like a white, much lighter color again, all in the effort to reduce that heat. And then other methods that reduce the stormwater or heat island effect, that could be the green roofs, green vegetative roofs that you see in the picture on the left. And that is a canopy over bicycle parking. And we'll just point out that this all has to be in a parking area because that's where we're applying this impervious coverage for these incentives to apply. The middle photo is it's called a blue roof. Again, that's just a water collection type technique. And then in the last photo, it's excuse me, solar panel canopies. And although that's not in a parking lot, it's just, a visual to show you what that looks like. That would have to be through parking areas in order to count. And then for the non-residential uses, to be eligible for maximum 10% additional impervious coverage, we'd be looking for green infrastructure techniques again, like the picture on the left. You see a rain garden, bioswale. Actually, that's a bioswale. And then in the middle picture and the one on the right, you see more plantings. That's more like a rain garden. And in the picture all the way on the right at the top, if you'll notice that rain garden landscaped area is actually immediately adjacent to the parking area, that would count, as part of the parking area. So that would be eligible. And then there's also some credits or additional percentage, 10% for plantings. And, you could have berms or, evergreens all along and adjacent to the parking areas, a berm, or in the photo all the way to the right. Again, there's a lot of tree plantings and shrubs, adding a lot of shade, obviously, to not only the parking area, but also to the sidewalk on the other side. And I'll just point out that the larger planting section that's immediately adjacent to the parking area would be what would be counted for that planting area for the 10%. The sidewalk and then to the planting area toward the street is public right of way, so that would not count. And then the third row of photos, you'll see those are called solar PV or solar panel trees. They're really just coverings. As you can see, they're providing shade. And in this photograph, they also have EV charging underneath that canopy. So you're getting, energy being created, plus you're getting shade, you're getting multiple benefits. And then they have solar coatings that actually go onto the surface, those surfaces. And then you have a solar farm to the right. And then if the pervious materials for parking areas are within the interior of the site, where the parking is behind the buildings, then those would be eligible for the 10% additional as well. And that's just showing again the crushed granite, and then the middle section is more of a bioswale, and then you have your turf block. And again, these additional impervious coverage percentages do not apply to the parkway streets. Again, those are just maxed out at 60% because they're along our vulnerable watersheds that we're wanting more protection. So, and then our last incentive for 10% is multi-use green or open space. And as you can see, that's mainly, wide open spaces, could be athletic field, could be, it's just a green open space that happens to occasionally be used for overflow parking or event parking. But for the most part, it's a green open space area. And that's just photo credits. And that's going to take us to our questions. And I'll turn it back over to Sarah so she can let me know what questions
Sure.
might be in the chat, and we'll just
Yeah.
take those.
Actually, you don't. We had one question about public participation and it being incorporated into the ZOAC review. I mentioned that we're still like when we get to the ZOAC meetings, there is a public comment part of those meetings that people can join online or attend in person, and that later on, once you finish gathering feedback from this meeting, yesterday's meeting, the other stakeholders you're reaching out to, and once we get a report published, so that there is a more definitive, solid staff recommendation, because we're still gathering those feedback. That's when we'll post a link on our website that people can submit comments about that proposal, and we'll provide all those to ZOAC. So those will and share it with CPC and beyond. So we definitely have those opportunities, and we're still, again, we haven't set anything in stone yet. This is just the direction that we, so far, based on our research, this is what we're coming up with. I'm sure ZOAC and CPC Council will have different opinions, so it'll probably change, but this is what we were starting with. So, do you want to add anything to that, Lori?
Um, no, I don't think so. Just I guess just the only thing is that we do have external partners that we were working with as well, and that are helping us with some of the research, and that'll hopefully I think they might help us with some educational opportunities for green infrastructure and learning, some DIY kind of projects, and some potential city projects, and using all of these great surfaces. Um, and so, the Smart Surfaces Coalition is one of them. And so we have used a lot of their research and guidance from them on these surfaces, and the different reductions that they can provide, and how they will help us meet our goals of reducing the stormwater runoff, the flooding from the stormwater runoff, and as well as the heat island effect, and try to help us meet our goals, citywide goals, in CCAP, the climate action plan for the city. So that, and I have on here our contact information, and just feel free to reach out after the fact, to myself or to Sarah. We have our project webpage up here, and we definitely want to hear your input. If you think, what you think about the percentages. Do you think that, do you agree with them? Do you think, they're adequate? We just want to hear your thoughts,
Mhm.
get some feedback so we can pass that along.
And the next one says, how will this be enforced on redevelopment of residential and commercial lots? And do you want me to take a shot, or you want to try that, Lori?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Sure.
So we do have some what we call applicability triggers for these things, and for the residential development. obviously would be applicable in new construction when they get permits for that, but it could also be applicable when someone wants to add, I think it's 200 square feet of pavement in the
More than
front
two.
yard. So, so if they want to add pavement in their front yard, then if something, if the current proposal is adopted, it would become effective after the effective date. And for commercial parking lots, it would be, basically, if they expand the surface parking lot, I think by 2,000 square feet,
More than
or
two.
if it's torn down and reconstructed. And what about building additions? I can't remember, Lori.
It's the same thing. I think
Okay,
it's
just if they're expanding the parking lot,
yes,
basically.
yeah.
Okay,
It triggers just at that threshold. You know,
right.
the 200,
So
more than 200 for residential, or more than 2,000 square feet in a 24-hour period for the non-residential.
24-month period, not 24-hour, right?
Oh, did I say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Correct. Thank
Just
you.
drag that out a little bit longer.
Sorry. Yeah.
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 Okay, and let's see. For the residential uses, would parking strips be included in the examples of pervious parking? And I think I understand parking strips is what I typically call ribbon driveways. Okay, so yes, so if they landscape that middle part between where the tires go, that would be impervious as long as it's not compacted soil. If they just fill it in with compacted soil and pavers or crushed granite, that would be considered impervious in our working definition that we have right now. So it all depends on how they do it. So like that duplex that we're seeing on the left-hand side there, because it's full of rocks and is probably compacted, I think, I don't know, it's got some plants growing, then I don't know, what do you think, Lori? Would that be pervious or impervious?
This strip looks like it has the basalt stone, so that might be. But I pulled this up for the photo with the ribbon driveway here for
On the right,
this
bottom right,
the
if y'all
bottom
can see
right.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have grass growing in between those two strips, so that would be pervious.
Right.
So that would not contribute to that calculation.
Right. Now, what I can't see, I'm thinking the car actually, I don't know if it goes
All the way
past,
down.
yeah, I don't know if it goes all the way up the drive, but
Yeah.
so but this portion would be pervious,
Mm-hmm.
wherever that ends, that grassy strip.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so next question that I see, who are the external educational partners that you referenced?
Yes, again, that's the Smart Services Coalition, and that is comprised of, and I know this is the thought just went out of my head. I'm sorry. There's several different entities that are included in that coalition. Um, A&M AgriLife, the Nature Conservancy has kind of been pulled in. Just a lot of different groups have formed the Smart Surfaces Coalition in this effort, and they've done data collection. They're helping us with data collection. Again, hopefully they're going to help us with the education piece. They've done some cost benefit type analysis, and they've done some for Baltimore. They've done a lot of work with them, so they already have a lot of that information. And they've put together a smart services guidebook. Some of the graphics I've used here for those smart surfaces, and they actually show some of the temperature readings in that guidebook. And I think I had one here, and I'll probably put some more in the staff report and the presentations for the public hearings, but where they've taken the temperature readings for the different surfaces, showing that differential. And that's why I had mentioned earlier that, the darker surfaces can get as high as like 160 degrees, whereas when they took the when they've in their case studies, when they've taken those temperature readings on the cool pavement coated surfaces, it was, it was like 15 degrees or so cooler. And then when you compare that same dark surface of 160 degrees to a bioswale, just a natural grassy area, um, you got as low as 35 degree differential. So, but they have a lot of that information in there. Um, so, we're very happy, pleased that they partnered with us, to help out in this effort. And we also have had other studies done for us over the years. And I want to say it was a few years ago, we had the green stormwater study where the Nature Conservancy, and I believe it was the Nature Conservancy along with Texas A&M AgriLife, they did a study of our different watersheds, Joe's Creek, Trinity River, the different areas, and tried to see which ones, again, were the most vulnerable. And then did a study to help us to determine what would be the most effective in helping with the stormwater and the heat island effect. And what they determined was the green infrastructure techniques that we're talking about, the natural areas, seem to be the most effective for the lower cost. um, and they identified also, of course, parking areas as to be, of course, one of your greatest contributors of the larger impervious surface areas, and stating that that's the biggest bang for your buck as far as, trying to lower the impervious surfaces within the parking areas for non-residential areas, and that the green infrastructure techniques, again, were just a great solution, nature-based type solution.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. Well, okay, let's see. Can you confirm that artificial turf is proposed to be included in the definition of impervious cover?
What I will say about that is, in our definition, it's really any surface that prevents or impedes water infiltration into to recharge groundwater. So we do include that, could include, a variety of materials. So if gravel, if pavers, if compacted soil, even if synthetic turf, any application even of these what we consider pervious surfaces, if they are not done properly or designed properly to and they still impede water, they will be considered impervious surfaces
Right.
for our
Yeah,
definition.
so it's more of a technical definition. Is it like a mesh that allows water to go through the turf, the artificial turf, or is it more solid that water runs off of it, basically, I think is
What
what our chief arborist decided he wanted to prefer because they come in different technical specifications and he wanted to be able to make a determination depending on the design of the artificial turf.
exactly, because right now, and that's part of the challenge. If you just call out a specific material, it may or may not really be pervious, because of the compacted soil, because of all of these factors. And so it's, that's why we have the technicality part of the definition. It has to be, it's the other layer. This is the regulation. It still has to be designed appropriately and will be checked, um, and has to be approved by our engineering department, our landscape arborist. Um, just because it's being proposed doesn't mean it will be acceptable as far as, unless it meets our design. We have our 2019 drainage design manual, and it has to meet all the specifications of that. So, it still has to follow our processes.
Mhm. Okay, and the last one so far, in case more come in, says for the bonuses, would trees need to be of a certain size? And if so, how would it affect new construction seeking a bonus?
Okay, yes, that's a great question, and yes, they couldn't just be any size. And I believe, still working with the arborists on that, but I believe medium or large trees are what we're looking for. Um, and so I don't know if that's going to come down to a caliper inch that's going to be specified in the ordinance, or if that's just it's going to kind of be what's termed or deemed a medium or large tree per the landscape ordinance now.
Right.
So for new construction, yeah, it would still have to be planted as, a medium or large, considered a medium or large tree.
Right. And based on some conversations I've had with the chief arborist in the past, they actually recommend planting some smaller caliper trees rather than trying to like transplant a 30-inch caliper tree because the younger trees actually have a better time adjusting to the new soil and growing in and being healthy, mature trees in the long
Survival.
run. So we're going to take the chief arborist direction on any, technical specification he wants, but
Excellent
so
point.
yeah, we're going to take his input and use that for the
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yes, excellent point. There's survivability of, the root system and all of that, comes into play. And so, yeah, absolutely, that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that
Yeah,
up.
yeah, no problem. All right, well, that's all the questions I see so far. If we wanted to graduate to a portion of this where if you just want to raise your hand, we can give you the ability to unmute and be on camera or keep your camera off and unmute. You don't have to have your makeup on. Um, and, or, that's about all we had to share. So we can,
Yeah.
we'll give you all a few minutes to decide if you want to come off. And if not, then we will post this recording on our website here in the next couple of days and email us and let us know if you have more questions and take that poll if you still have time. There's a place to put your email address there. Also, there's another survey at the very top of the chat. So yeah, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like we still have, 6 minutes, a little over 6 minutes before the poll closes. So.
Mhm, mhm. All right. I see people dropping off, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.